So General Funk, we appreciate you being here, and you're welcome to introduce your team and share with us anything you would like to share with regard to your budget. I will ask that if there is an increase being requested, that you'll share with us how that will improve services, and if there is no increase, how you will sustain services.
Great. Great. Well, thanks. I've got with me Michael Brook. He's been the CFO and HR person for the District Attorney's Office since the 1980s. And he's with me tonight in case there are any questions that I need to get his financial expertise to help explain. Talk a little bit about the District Attorney's Office. It's our job to prosecute every case or to make a decision on whether to prosecute every case that comes through the criminal justice system. It's really our mission to help keep the community safe and to do what we can through the criminal justice system to keep the community healthy. It's also to try to impart a fairness to the community with regards to criminal justice issues. I'll talk for just a second about some of the issues that we've heard over the last couple speakers. Ms. Diener talked about how we're trying to work through the criminal justice system on getting an evidence-based risk assessment for pretrial release. One of the reasons we got the grant here in Nashville, even though many different judicial districts applied for that grant, is because everybody in the criminal justice system, from the judges to the district attorney to the public defender's office, were all on board in seeing what we could do to have a pretrial risk assessment tool in place to where we don't see folks incarcerated pretrial just because they don't have enough money to make bond. I'm all for making sure that offenders are held accountable, but I also think that we should not punish people if we can avoid it and if the community can be safe, but we shouldn't be starting the punishment until after someone's been convicted of a crime. Ms. Diener talked about the revoked driver's license issues that she's dealing with, and we're working with her to see, we're a partner in her PIP program, because we're going to see what we can do about helping citizens get their driver's licenses. That's good for the community in any number of ways, one of which is officer safety, because if a police officer pulls someone over, if they've got a valid driver's license, then the officer knows who the officer has pulled over and whether or not they need backup. It's also important because we want everybody to have a job, and in this community you really need to be able to drive to get to your job. It's also good because we want people to be able to take care of their children and their families and take the kids to the doctor and go to the grocery store and not be looking over their shoulder because they're driving on a revoked license. We have seen a tremendous decrease because we are not putting people in jail at this point for driving on a revoked license unless the license was revoked for DUI. And that's part of the punishment for DUIs. You lose your license for a year. In 2013, there were roughly 18,000 inmate days in jail for just driving on a revoked license. That's the only charge. I think, let's see, I think we've got the actual stat. This is the number of people, the number of inmates. It's roughly 18,000 days in jail in 2013. In 2015, that was down to 2,000. It went from 18,229 days in jail to, in 2015, it was 2,612 days. If you take Sheriff Hall's figures that we're saving $100 per inmate day, that saved the community $1.6 million just by having a common sense approach to whether or not we should put someone in jail for being too poor to get their license back. And also that's 16,000 days where people could be home with their families or out working. And so for all those reasons, we think that's a significant improvement to where we are as a community. Also, Judge Callaway is working on a project, and I'm working with her on potentially starting a restorative justice program where juveniles who do not have violent crimes may have an opportunity to enter a restorative justice program as opposed to going through an actual court system and potentially being branded a criminal when they look in the mirror, but do some things to try to keep them out of the criminal justice system. She and I are traveling to Oakland in July to study their system and to see if that's something that could potentially work in Nashville. If we do that in Nashville, I need to make sure I get the hard questions answered before I even start to roll something like that out, such as, are we really seeing a recidivism rate? What crimes are put into a restorative justice program? how do we make sure that victims are properly validated and supported throughout that process, and what do we do to follow up on those individuals to make sure that they are not offending in the future. But it's something where if we can get somebody who is starting to get off track back on track at age 15, 16, 17, we may see benefits for that person's life for the rest of their life, and better for our community. On the other hand, there are some areas that we are getting very serious about. We've always been serious in the DA's office about protecting children, but that's really where our focus has been, is on violent crimes and vulnerable victims. One of the increases in the mayor's recommended budget is funding 2 attorney positions. Right now, we have 4 district attorneys that are handling child sex abuse cases and child physical abuse cases. We have 6 criminal courts, and those folks are, in fact, overworked, overloaded, and obviously those are some of the most important cases that we have come through the system. What we're going to do, if the council approves this, is to take two attorneys and move those into the child abuse division of the office, to where we've got 1 district attorney in each of the 6 criminal courts, in a way where we can give better service to those families and those children who have been abused, neglected physically or sexually. What that really is an unfreezing of 2 of the positions that we had frozen. Don't want to get too far into the weeds on this, but Metro has funded historically a number of positions in our office. We have 5 positions that were approved by the Metro Council but are no longer funded. The reason for that is because in the state system there are step raises. Every year, if you've been in the district attorney's office, you get about a 5% raise from the time that you're hired until for the first 25 years that you're in the DA's office. There's never been a mechanism that would just have Metro fund the step raises as some of those folks have achieved more senior status. My predecessor made the right call and said, well, we can't pay state lawyers one level and Metro funded lawyers another level, and so in order to make sure that their salaries matched, we'll just cannibalize a position here, and then a few years later had to cannibalize another position. So what the mayor has done is the mayor has included funding for 2 entry-level district attorney positions. So essentially that takes our frozen positions down from 5 to 3. And then we'll be able to have those people as entry level, and we'll take some of the folks that are already in the office and move them into the child sex abuse. So that's how we will use that money if the council approves it. It does still beg the question of, well, what happens going forward, and it might be that in the next couple of years we have to recannibalize that, unless at some point in the next year or so the council funds or figures out some way for Metro paid district attorneys to have the same increased levels that the state district attorneys do. But that's something that I'll be working closely with the mayor's office, see what we can do, and then hopefully bring something to the council at a later date. For this budget cycle, though, it's just trying to refund those 2 positions. The other increase in services is the grand jury relocation. Several years ago, I think it was 2013, Mr. Brook and Rich Riebling negotiated with Washington Square an option on some space. We do have some space issues in the district attorney's office already. And on top of that, the last grand jury that met included in their report that they thought that the grand jury should not actually be located right next to the entrance to the district attorney's office. The grand jury is an independent body, and we treat it as an independent body, but reading from their report, the grand jury often wondered if the grand jury would feel more like an independent body if it did not meet in the district attorney's office. We were able to have a very meaningful conversation with both Judge Watkins and District Attorney General Funk regarding the need for the grand jury to be an independent body if the criminal justice system is to work at its best. So what would happen if, assuming that this gets funded, if the mayor put it in her budget, is that we would take that option that's for space on the 4th floor, move the grand jury down there, and then take the space that the grand jury is currently housing and build out some additional offices for attorneys to be able to make sure that we've got attorney offices there. The build-out would come out of other parts of our budget. We're not asking for additional monies for that. This grand jury relocation is just what the extra rent would be. Other than that, what the mayor has been great to work with. She has been more than receptive to hearing our concerns. Mr. Riebling has worked with us as well. We appreciate what she has included as far as these funding these extra positions and this extra space, and we can work within her budget for the next year. And I'm open for any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing no one in the queue, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.